Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. I've had the opportunity to do some coaching within Crop Aid to one of the distributors, Kevin. I hope I don't, I can share that. As well as one of your wholesalers in Alberta, I do some coaching for them. And so I've become quite familiar with your product. And honestly, I think what I like the most is just the farmer stories and the grower stories I hear of the success of the product. Heard lots of good stories, lots of good results, and so it's nice to talk to a group when I know the product's just doing a great job. So thanks for having me. As you mentioned, I work with a lot of retailers, also a lot of direct-to-farm sellers, and prospecting is a critical task for everyone. Even if you feel like you've got a good customer base now, or you've got a nice network of farmers and friends and stuff like that you're going to start selling to, eventually that network gets exhausted. They're either customers or not, and we're left to go prospecting. And so today we're going to take a closer look at some of the skills within prospecting, and in particularly how to gain an appointment when prospecting. Kevin gave a pretty good introduction of me, so I won't belabor that. But I just want to highlight that Cargill Farmer's Edge piece of my career. With Cargill, I learned a lot about professional selling, the kitchen table strategy is what we call it at that time, how to hold effective sales calls. But it was important I went to Farmer's Edge because Farmer's Edge was a lot smaller company. And I learned that, big beast like Cargill isn't exactly the same as someone like Farmer's Edge. And so you learned that nimbleness was important for a small company. And I think one of the bigger things is that in a Cargill space, a sales team is given a large customer list. Cargill's been around a long time. People have hauled grain, even a load or two. You get this nice big long customer list when you go to work for a company like that. Farmer's Edge was a much different story because we were trying to grow as a company and we didn't always have a big long list of customers. We had to go find customers. And so that direct to farm presence selling, we had to learn how to prospect. We had to learn how to cold call. And that was an important piece as we look at prospecting today. I want to introduce a sales process because having the sales process and understanding what it is allows each step that we make with a grower to be aligned to where we're heading with the grower, which is ultimately a sale. And so, definition of a sales process, a set of repeatable steps that a salesperson takes from a prospective buyer through that early stage of awareness to a closed sale, right? And it's really that journey we're going to give the customer, but it's a road path for us. It's some steps. There's this myth that we hear sometimes about this natural-born salespeople, which says, oh, you're really charismatic. You should be in sales. We hear that all the time. Oh, or maybe we tell someone, oh, you're really good with people. You should be in sales. And sometimes we hear from the quiet folks that are like, I don't know if I could do sales. I'm pretty quiet, or I don't like crowds, or so on. There isn't really a correlation between charismatic people and successful salespeople. I've worked with lots of quiet salespeople who are great salespeople, and I've worked with, unfortunately, some loud people that aren't very good salespeople. And so, we probably experience some of those over-charismatic salespeople when we go to maybe a car dealer or something like that, or a furniture store, and they're there and they're at us and they're making us uncomfortable and things like that. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that everyone can be a salesperson, and that if we've got a set of steps or a sales process, we've got a guidance system that will help us have effective sales calls. So this is the sales process that I use. I designed this one because I found that when we go selling to farmers, directly especially, we can fall into a trap of trying to make a sale every time we go to the farm. And that's like a baseball player trying to hit a home run every time we go to the plate. We just had a very exciting World Series. And there was a few times where I think we lost some games because everybody was trying to hit home runs. Baseball's about small ball. It's about advancing the runner. And sales is about advancing the sales process. It's about taking a customer along through the sales process at the speed that makes sense, but it's about trying to advance it each time. It's not about repeat visit, repeat visit, repeat visit with no advancement. We want to advance the sales process. The other thing that's important is sometimes we can have this great pitch deck or great pitch put together for us, which is excellent, can be helpful for us. But I run into a lot of salespeople who get to that first meeting and they just pitch. And we're dumping features and benefits and we're telling them how great our product is. And we haven't explored and discovered. We don't know the farm. If we can't match their need to our product, we are in danger of having a one-time customer and never having that customer again. If we promise, try this, you'll get 3 or 4 more bushels, and there's no connection to why they need this product and what it's going to do for them, we will exhaust our customer base very quickly. So we need to understand there's a sales process. We need to run the bases in order. We have to be careful of pitching and promising. We have to match that need. Not many people will spend good money on something unless they need it. Yeah, we'll buy a chocolate bar at the grocery store when we don't need it, but we're not selling chocolate bars. They're much more expensive than chocolate bars, okay? So, if I'm doing full-out sales training, we'd go through the whole process, we'd go through the steps. But today we're here to talk about that very first step, that gaining of the appointment. Because if we can't get an appointment, and when I say gaining an appointment, it's that first sit-down meeting with the customer where we can start to explore and discover, we can start to get to know that farm. That's an important thing. But first we've got to gain that appointment. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because gaining appointment has become more challenging all the time. So why is gaining an appointment such a challenge? Well, at the essence of it, we're interrupting the customer's life. And we have to accept that. Unless we have hidden cameras on our customers, we don't know what they're doing, we don't know what they're up to. And we can get really cute trying to figure out the right time to talk to them. Oh, it's 11 o'clock. I better not reach out to them because maybe they're having an early lunch. And then next we hear, oh, it's 1 o'clock. Maybe they're having a late lunch. Maybe I better not talk to them. Oh, it's close to harvest. Maybe I'll wait till after harvest. Or, it's Christmas. I don't want to bug them at Christmas. We can talk ourselves out of making all these appointments if we're trying to avoid interrupting their life. We have to accept that we're going to be interrupting their life, and so we just have to manage how we interrupt their life, okay? We struggle to gain appointments because of the bad salespeople who came before us. The more bad salespeople come on the farm, the more that farm doesn't necessarily want to talk to the next salesperson. And by bad salespeople, we can have people who came, didn't really talk about much, took an hour or two of their time, stayed too long. Farmers like, what was the point of that? We can be salespeople who came in and pitched too strong and was off-putting and tried to sell them something they didn't need. And they're like, do I want to not talk to another salesperson? Unfortunately, they're there. There's a lot of salespeople who just, are there to try and sell. Or the salesperson who came once, kind of got the farmer interested, never came back again. We have to be careful of that. So we have to, sometimes it's not us that's holding them back from meeting with us, but it's previous experiences. Maybe we don't have a compelling reason to meet. I'm in the area, I thought I'd drop by. If you're a busy farmer, does that really sell you on that farm call? You're saying you're kind of got time and you weren't really planning on seeing me, but you thought you'd drop by because you got time. I'm the farmer. I might not have time for you to just drop by. We have to have a compelling reason to meet. We have anxiety and manufacture obstacles. I see this a lot where, I tried the customer a couple times. They didn't return my calls. I don't think they want to talk to me. And then 2 weeks later, the farmer phones and says, hey, sorry, I've been avoiding you. Can you come out and talk to me? Or we run into them at a trade show and they're like, hey, I was interested in your product, but you just kept calling. Or you just quit calling, sorry. We can put our own mind games in place that stop us from getting that appointment. We've got to be careful of that too. I spend a lot of time in my coaching people out of some of those mind games. We fall for automated responses such as, now's not a good time, we're hauling grain. Okay, you might be hauling grain, but it's also become a brush off. Or, I've got all my inputs for this year, maybe next year. Probably don't have all their inputs. Probably a brush off. So we fall for some of those sometimes. Or we lack courage to proceed because we're afraid of rejection. Sometimes sales is not the funnest job. There is rejection. And so we start to talk ourselves out of it. Or we use the wrong form of communication. We're going to dig into that a little bit today. Or possibly we're targeting the wrong customer. Well, let's talk about that wrong customer. So this is a product adoption curve. And this is taught in almost all marketing courses and so on. But we've got this, innovator, which is a small piece of the customer. Then we have the early adopter, which is a few more customers. Then we have the early majority, the late majority, and the laggard. And each product that gets sold, no matter what the product is, tends to go through this, okay? If you look at the early majority, that would say 50% of farmers will be using our product when we're at that stage. So what stage do we think we're at with some of our crop aid products? Fire away if anyone got an idea. Yes?
I really think we're in the first couple of stages right now.
First couple of stages. We've got the innovators and maybe the early adopters.
That's the way I feel my customer.
It makes sense to me. Maybe in some other areas it's getting a little further towards the middle, but I think that's where we're at. So that's important because if we go on a farm and we're trying to sell to the late majority or the laggards, we're going to have a very tough time. Not because our product's bad, but because they're not ready to go there yet. And we can spend and exhaust ourselves spending a lot of time with those customers not to get a sale. And here's the thing, is that some of those customers in the late majority will sound very interested in our product. They'll love to talk about it, but it doesn't mean they're going to buy. I have solar panels in my house. I have all kinds of conversations with people about my solar panels. That someone comes to my house, they're like, oh, tell me about your solar panels and what does it do and how does it work? And they're very interested in it. But no one that I have talked to about solar panels has ever bought any solar panels. So just because you're interested in something from a farmer standpoint doesn't mean you're ready to buy. And we've got to watch for that. The innovators, to recognize the innovators maybe a little bit, is they're the ones that like to try things first. They're the ones that might come to us first, to a trade show, to call us up, say, tell me about your product, or I'm thinking of using your product. And they don't really care about data too much because they want to create their own data, okay? And those are the ones that try quite quickly. They like to do their own trials, that kind of stuff. If you talk to growers and you see them doing lots of trials their own, you might be at the innovator place. The early adopters might want a little bit of data from you because they want to know that there's some sign that it's working, that kind of thing. But they're not going to ask for lots of data from the area. Now we're getting into the sort of early majority. They want to know that there's some data in the area. The late majority, they'll be saying, how many people are using this in my area? Because they want to know that more farmers are using this, lots of farmers are using this before they adopt something. So as you explore and discover, and as you talk to customers, I think it's important to assess, are you targeting the right customer, or is this a few years down the road customer? Because if you spend too much time with a customer who's not interested, you might not get to the customers who are interested, okay? We might not be getting an appointment because we're using the wrong type of communication, okay? This is sort of your different methods of communication. And you've got your synchronous, that's where both parties are communicating at the same time, and you've got your asynchronous where one party is communicating at a time. I often get asked, or you hear a lot of chatter right now about, oh, social media sells, and social media is all you need, and things like that. Social media is important, marketing is important, but it's not going to close sales for you. It's going to create awareness and familiarity, which is good because people like to buy from people they're familiar with, or like to buy from companies they're familiar with. So all that's important, but it's not going to create sales for you. Just like emails can be important, but emails are not the tool for gaining an appointment. Emails are great for sending some follow-up information, but they're not used enough by farming. Email boxes get too full, but it's too delayed in the communication. When it comes to gaining an appointment, the two methods that we want to use the most are face-to-face, so drop-in cold calls if we're talking prospecting, or phone calls. And phone calls, the important thing is we need a phone number. So if you're trying to prospect someone that you don't have a phone number, you're really left with drop-in cold calls. But if you've got some leads from trade shows or marketing campaigns, then we can use the phone as well. The reason we don't want to use something like text, and text is really becoming used too much for gaining appointments, is text doesn't allow us to use some of the tactics such as overcoming brush-offs or going back and forth on an appointment. If you text someone and you say, hey, I'd like to come out and see you, and they say, no, I'm busy. As soon as you start replying, well, would another time work better? Or how come you're busy? Or could it just take 5 minutes? It gets into arguing really quickly. And we don't want to get into arguing. Whereas if you phone someone and say, no, that doesn't really work for me, we can carry on the conversation. We can challenge that. We can ask for a better time. We can respond more face-to-face or over the phone than text. So we really want to look at face-to-face and phone calls. If it's a customer you know really well, you have a great relationship, they've been buying stuff from you, then texting might work. But don't get it confused with prospects. You want to do face-to-face and phone calls whenever you can. So those are where we're going to talk today, is about drop-in cold calls and phone calls. So in coaching salespeople for years, and in particular coaching salespeople on drop-in cold calls, I find that anxiety creeps into us in 3 different areas in a drop-in cold call. So let me ask, who loves making cold calls to people they don't know at all? Okay, we've got a few. Great. I'd love to get everybody to that level, but there is apprehension, and that's okay, because they're not the best thing to do. They're not the funnest thing to do. There is challenges. You're going to set yourself up for rejection. I understand why the anxiety creeps in. But if we break down a cold call, there's three sort of areas where I find the anxiety can creep in. One is the approach. That's the driving around an area. You get close, you see this nice farm, big bins, everything looks good. You get to the driveway, and boom, you go right by. Has anyone driven by a driveway and been, I should stop there, but okay. That's the approach, and it can freak us out. The second is the entrance. So we've made it down that driveway. We're driving down that driveway, and sometimes you get that long drive. I had a sales rep who could not cold call on long driveways. Great at cold calling, but it was a long driveway. As soon as I was traveling with him, that's where we were going, every long driveway in the territory. You've also got those driveways where there's the trees, and then beyond the trees, what lies beyond the trees? We're not sure. So there's the approach. So as we approach into the yard, we get into the yard, there's a shop, there's two houses. I thought there was only one house. Where do I go? Where do I drive? That can freak some people out right in that approach. Anyone get freaked out in the approach into the yard? Few, a little laugh, okay. And then the third one is you've driven in, you've got into the yard, the farmer comes over, and now we're gonna have a call. A sales call. It's happening. I've had people panic at that moment. Ask a couple questions. Okay, we'll see you later. Zoom. That can be another area of anxiety. Okay? So there's tactics for each of these areas. Let's look at that approach. Okay? I believe, and I've seen it work, that it is okay to do a reconnaissance trip. You're on recon, just like the Army. You're going to drive in an area, you're going to drive around, you're going to find those yards that look really good. Maybe you're going to mark them in your map, and you're going to establish who your targets are without driving down the driveway. And that's okay. That's a first step. And it feels better to just go out and find those yards than to go, oh, I should drive in there, boom. Oh, I should drive in there, boom. That's deflating on us when we keep almost driving in yards. Don't go drive the first time. Go find them. Grab your RM or county map, iHunter. Try and figure out who lives there. Now you got a name and a yard. Now Google the farm. Do they have a website? Do we know anything about them? Ask around. Talk to some people you know in the area. Who is this grower? What can you tell me about that grower? Create some familiarity for yourself. Do a little research with that grower. And then select your targets and go. If you know you're going to an area and there's 3 farms you're going to go see, it gets you down that driveway better, because your goal now is to get down those 3 driveways. And that's what you want to do. So select your targets, know your targets, and go is easier on us than, I should drive down that driveway, but you don't. Okay? Simple tips that can make that first part of a cold call better. Now the entrance. So we're going to drive down that long driveway, we're going to go beyond the trees. Google Earth the farm. What does it look like? When you get through those trees, what are you going to find? Is there 2 houses? Is there 1 house? Is there a shop? It's amazing if you get onto that farm and you feel familiar with the layout of the farm, your anxiety is not up here. You know a little bit about where you're going, okay? Second of all, if you've got a contact name, now you're not, hey, is the farm manager around? It's like, hey, is Jim around? If you can get a contact name, great. Develop an on-farm process. So the process I often recommend is go to the shop. It used to be when I first started selling, it was go to the house. Now, much more, there's things that go on the shop, there's more offices at the shop, that kind of thing. Go to the shop. Knock on the door. Nobody hears you, you don't hear any noise, don't go in the shop. But leave a card, maybe a brochure, in the door of the shop. Because we're now on someone's yard, there's a lot more cameras on yards, and we want to make sure that whoever is watching on the video or sees us now knows who's been on their yard. It'll go a lot better for us if we start to do that. Plus, sometimes they actually call us back. Leave that. If the shop's noisy and there's a bunch of stuff there and you're banging on the shop and nobody's in there, you could probably go in the shop and give it that big hello and see if anyone invites you in. But don't go wandering around through shops if there's no noise, that kind of thing. Just my recommendation anyways. After the shop, you didn't get a hold of anyone, then I proceed to the house. But the house, I'm going to be a little more careful about. If you knock on the door of the house and you can hear there's people in the house but they don't come to the door, do not peer into the house. I had a sales rep do this into the house. I got a phone call very quickly telling me to never send that person to the farm again. Houses has a different level of privacy. But knock on the door, if nobody comes, business card, brochure, and leave. Okay? But I suggest the process because for a lot of us, if we have a process, it will be less anxious on us. If we're just sort of rambling around the yard with no process, we will be nervous. But if it's shop, house, leave, we will feel better about it. Okay? If we get into the call, again, we can panic pretty quickly if we're not prepared. Prepare questions. Have a set of questions for first-time meetings. Things you're going to ask. Have an elevator speech. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but have an elevator speech. Because they might say, who are you and what do you do? And you have to have some answer for what you are and what you do. So have that prepared. Don't script the questions. If you have a script, you're going to sound like those nice people that tell us that phone us all the time. Don't have a script, but rather prepare questions, review those questions enough so that they're in your memory, as you got a memory bank of good questions for prospecting, and pull them out as you need them. But don't script yourself. Okay? There's a subtle difference between having lots of questions up here and scripting yourself. Don't script yourself, have lots of questions. Know when to leave. If you're doing a cold call and you stay way too long, that will hurt our ability to gain any sort of appointment again. And there's subtle things. If you pull up to the shop and a guy's lying under a piece of equipment and he doesn't get out from under that piece of equipment and he's talking to you through the equipment, you probably have 5 or 10 minutes on that call and you should probably get going. If he gets out, turns off a piece of equipment, stays standing by the equipment, you might have a little more time to talk to him. If he says, hey, we're just going to have coffee, come into the shop, you have more time to talk to him. So there's subtle things that we need to pick up. If you go to the house and someone opens the door and sticks about this much, their head through, brochure, business card, come back another time. If they open the door, come out, close the door, you might have 5 to 10 minutes to make it, maybe grab a contact name from them, that kind of thing. If they say, hey, come on in, obviously we have more time. But it's those subtle cues that we have to be able to pick up on to know when to leave. And always err on leaving a little bit earlier rather than a little too late. Okay? Now, what is a win to a cold call? The win on a cold call is having made the cold call. Because at the essence of a drop-in cold call, we don't actually know if someone's there. So if you go on a bunch of cold calls and nobody was there and you're all mad at yourself and beat up because you didn't have a successful day, no, you had a successful day because you did the cold calls. Because that's all you could guarantee yourself, is making the cold call. If you made the cold call, that's a success. Now, the goal of a cold call is a little bit different. You want to get contact number so we don't have to make cold calls again, and permission to have that first meeting, to have a meeting with them. That's the goal of a cold call. So what we want to accomplish is a little bit more than how we're going to measure a win. But a win is just making the cold calls. Okay? So there's some tips on cold calls. We also have the phone. And again, to make cold calls on the phone, we have to have a contact number. So again, maybe it came from a trade show, referral, something like that. There is a little bit of trick or process to making phone calls asking for the appointment. And this one's going to contradict some of the stuff that's in our head. It did when I first read it. This comes from Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blunt. He's a great author on prospecting, and I really thought the process stuck with me. So let's say, again, we're interrupting customers. So we phone this customer, and maybe he's got the grain truck running already, and he's going to go hauling grain, and he's got 5 minutes, and he answers that call, and so he answers, but maybe he's shouting at hired men and whatever else while he answers because they're busy. The first thing we want to do is gain their focus. And so a simple way to gain their focus is use their name. Hi, John. And they go, yep, perfect. We now have their focus. Now we want to quickly identify ourselves. Hello, this is Kevin White from Saskatoon, from Crop Aid. We want to identify ourselves, the company, and the location we're from. And the reason we're doing that is we want to create familiarity as quickly as possible. We think of when we get those calls from I'm picking on TELUS, calls from TELUS. When you pick up a call from an unknown number, you're like, where's this coming from? Is this a scam? As an answerer of the phone, your anxiety is high. But as you hear if they know you and you say, hey, this is Kevin White, or this is Neil Zacharias, and the person's heard of us, their anxiety is immediately going to drop because, oh, this is somebody I know. Okay? But if they don't know us and we say Crop Aid, and they've heard of Crop Aid, still going to lower the anxiety because, wait a minute, this is a company I've heard of, this is a company in agriculture, this is someone who's applicable, and that anxiety starts to drop. And then we say Saskatoon or Rosetown or Red Deer, whatever, and they go, oh, it's local. Now their anxiety drops further. And that's why we want to get this out quickly, because we are running the risk of them hanging up, getting us off the phone too quickly, that kind of thing. We want to create as much familiarity as we can. Then we want to request the appointment, because our goal here is to just get a meeting with them. Not to sell them something, just to get a meeting with them. And say, I'm calling to schedule some time with you. And then we want to throw a because. They did this psychological study, and because is a word that even when we don't have a very good reason, if someone says because, the listener goes, oh, they must have thought about this. There's a reason I have to meet with this person. Okay, so we're going to say because. Because you dropped by at our trade show and left your name, I'm reaching out to you. Whatever the because is. But you're going to have a because and a reason. And then we're going to go right to an either or question. Would this week or next week work better? Okay? There's one thing in this phone call that might seem weird, is nowhere have we asked them how they're doing. And that's on purpose. Our mom or dad or whoever always said, well, ask them how they're doing. Right? Personal phone calls are different than business calls. And here's the thing. Again, they're busy. That truck's idling. They want to get going. They answered the phone. We gave them some familiarity. They're like, okay, I kind of know this person. More often than not, what I've heard when someone says, how you doing? Oh, actually, I'm really busy. I'm just going to head out in the grain truck. I'll have to talk to you another time. Click. We don't want to give, if we have the baton, we don't want to give them the baton till we've got out what we want to say, until we've asked them a question that they can start answering. And the question we don't want to ask them is, how you doing? Because they're busy, and that's the perfect opportunity to tell us that and get off the phone. Rather, it's much better to say, would this week or next week work better? Okay? And I want to talk about this either or question. This is on purpose. Because I hear too many people say, what time would work good for you? As a farmer, that's a very overwhelming question. What time would work good for me? First off, I probably don't have a day timer right beside me that I can flip through and say, oh, it looks like I got time at 2 o'clock on Thursday. 2, I got to guess a time, and then you're going to say, oh, that doesn't work for me, and so on. So don't ask them what time works well for you. Guide them through. Does this week or next week work better? This week I'm hauling grain, it'd have to be next week. Okay. Early in the week, late in the week. Late in the week we're leaving, better be early in the week. Okay. Monday or Tuesday? Monday's a mess, better be Tuesday. Okay. Tuesday. Morning or afternoon? Morning would be better. I got kids in the afternoon. Okay, morning. Do you want me to come right at 8 o'clock, or would 10 o'clock be better? Come right at 8 o'clock. Perfect. See you 8 o'clock. Monday. Done. Appointment's been made. Either or questions are much easier for the customer to answer. And we want to make this as simple as possible on them. Okay? So remember, when we're phoning for that appointment, they're busy, we interrupted their life. Don't turn it into a great big old conversation. Just get the appointment. We can have a great conversation then. Okay? Keep that in mind. That's key for some of this phone call stuff. Okay? Now, we will have some brush-offs. Because why do people use brush-offs? Well, because it gets us off the phone or it gets us off the yard, right? And so how do we tell when people are using brush-offs? If we start to hear the same answer from multiple farmers, it could be a brush-off. Brush-offs such as, I'm hauling grain, now's not a good time. So you phone the next guy. I'm hauling grain, now's not a good time. You phone the next guy. I'm hauling grain, now's not a good time. Might be a brush-off. Yes, they might be hauling grain, but you don't always haul grain all week or for the next 2 weeks. There's some time slots in there. But getting salespeople off the phone, so I'm hauling grain, now's not a good time. Or pretty soon we'll hear it's Christmas season, can we talk in the new year? Oh, it's Christmas season, can we talk in the new year? Might be a brush off. I'm happy with my current crop input supplier. They don't even know what you sell, really. You're trying to get an appointment. I'm like, we're happy with our current crop input supplier. Might be a brush off. Okay? So if you're starting to hear some of the same brush offs, it might be a brush off. The classic brush off is you walk into a clothing store, someone comes over, they say, can I help you? And we say, no, I'm just looking. And they go, and they leave. I'll be honest, when I go in a clothing store, I'm never just looking. I don't like browsing and wandering through the mall and checking out the new outfits. That's not me. But I've used this a million times. Can I help you? No, I'm just looking. And sales rep, why am I doing that? Because the sales rep leaves me alone. Okay? That's what a brush off is, and we have them in agriculture too. But think about it. All they have to do, all that salesperson has to do is say, oh, okay, no, that sounds great. Take your time. Oh, but what are you looking for? Well, now they got me. I wasn't prepared for that question. Well, I'm looking for jeans. Oh, okay, well, our jeans are over there. What kind of jeans do you like? I like Silvers and Levi's. Okay, well, we got Silvers here and Levi's here. What size are you? They've got me. We're having explore and discover. Because all they did was ask another question that I wasn't prepared for when I tried the brush off. But too many salespeople in the clothing industry just get out of the way. But they could do so much more. So the same thing applies to us when we have a brush off. Here's why we fall for brush offs. You've got the courage to phone a customer, you got the courage to drive on their yard, and they say, now's not a good time, I'm hauling grain, we'll have to talk another time. When someone rejects us, we tend to go into fight or flight mode. We're in our amygdala. And so we're not going to fight the customer. Maybe you are. I'm not going to fight the customer, but we flee. We're like, okay, yeah, no, that sounds good. I'll talk to you later. Click, Zoom, whatever. We get out of the way, we flee. Because we don't like rejection. So the first thing to overcoming brush offs is you got to pause. Just breathe. Anchor your feet. Go. Stop yourself from Zoom. Okay? That's the first step. Second of all, when the customer brushes us off, they're actually a little bit prepared for a fight. They're like, well, what are you going to do? You going to argue with me? What are you going to do? So we want to agree. We want to agree with them. Ease them. Okay, no, that's perfect. That's fine. Then we're going to surprise them with something like, that's perfect. That's why I called. And we're like, what? If you knew I was hauling grain, why? And then we're going to go back to a question. Because just like in that clothing example, we're trying to get to a real conversation where they're answering our questions and it's not a brush off. Okay? Let's look at this as an example. I'm sorry, but we're busy hauling grain right now. That's fabulous. Right? There's that agreement. That's fabulous. I'm glad you're getting that chance to haul with the good weather. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, good. This salesperson understands me, right? Here comes the surprise. That's why I wanted to reach out to you. You wanted to reach out to me because I'm hauling grain. Now we have their attention, right? Because we just said something contradictory. With grain hauling and Christmas fast approaching, I wanted to get in your schedule. I think our product is best discussed before the end of the year. Would it be better for us to find a time when would it be better for us to find a time when you're not hauling, this week or next week? So we went right back to the either or question, but we got past the brush off. And now we can get into this real conversation. If they're truly hauling grain for the next 2 weeks, every day, they'll tell us that. But I think this is where we're going to start to get into conversation. We're like, this week's bad because we're hauling grain. Next week, it might have some time slots. And now we can either or it further and we can get that appointment. It's simple, but we don't do it enough. Okay? We tend to fall for the brush. Okay, I'll call you back later. Click. What's wrong with that is, when is later? Is it 2 weeks from now? Is it 3 weeks from now? And meanwhile, so we got to muster up the courage again. We got to phone them back. We got to guess when the right time to call them back is. We call them back and the brush off comes out again. It's pretty close to Christmas. Can we talk about this in the new year? And now we've gone from trying to get a call in November to maybe getting a call in January. And I've seen sales reps go from brush off to brush off to brush off to brush off. And we've had a customer that we've been targeting for a long time, and it's months later. And maybe we've missed an end of the year sale that we're trying to talk to them about. Or maybe we missed the spray window for the first pass. And now we're talking about a second pass. And the only reason we missed it is we just couldn't get time with the customer because we kept getting brushed off. So we need tactics to be able to get past some of these brush-offs. So here's the thing. It's very hard to come up with a tactic for every possible brush-off you could get. So think seasonally. If you're making a call to get a bunch of appointments with people, or you're dropping by to get appointments, and you think there might be a common brush-off like hauling grain or Christmas or, next year or whatever the kind of brush-off is, build some tactics of how you might handle this. If you're getting a lot of, we're happy with our current input supplier, build one for that. That's perfect. I like people who have loyalty to their input supplier. That's why I wanted to talk to you. It would be great to understand what people are doing well in the area and what we need to do well as an input supplier. Could we meet this week or next week to get your feedback on that? Right? We can turn that into a way to ask for an appointment too. But we have to put a little pre-thought into how we're going to counter some of those brush-offs. Okay? Final thing I want to talk about today is building that elevator speech. So an elevator speech at its essence is you climb into the elevator in a business office building, and lo and behold, someone that you wanted to talk to gets in the elevator with you, and they go, so what do you do? And you've got from the bottom floor to the top floor or wherever you're going to convince the person of why he wants to talk to you. That's where elevator speech comes from, okay? In our world, you go on the farm, he looks at your shirt, your truck, whatever, he says, crop aid, what do you guys do? And now you got the floor, but it's very important, the very next few things you're going to say determines whether they're going to listen to you any further. Okay? And so I used to do a lot of elevator speech building with my sales staff at Cargill and Farmer's Edge and so on. And honestly, I was doing it wrong. And so then I read this book called New Sales Simplified by Mike Weinberg, where he talks about sales stories and how they should be done. I'm like, oh man, we've been doing this wrong. So let me talk about the old way first. The old way is, hi, I'm Neil from Briggs Sales Coaching and Management. We're a sales coaching business out of Edmonton, focusing on agriculture. We've been in the business for over 5 years and really enjoy working with our customers. We offer sales coaching, sales training, and mentorship programs. I was wondering if you might have a few moments today to discuss your business and whether there might be a fit. Missed the end of it. Somewhere in this, most people, probably including you, were tuning me out. Because this is all about me. And all those salespeople that come to the farm tend to have something like this that tells you all about me. And it's just words eventually, and they tune us out. And that's dangerous, because if they tune us out in this space, chances are they're going to tune us out the rest of the call too. Okay? So here's a new way of doing it. Sorry, I got to go over here. Hi, I'm Neil Zacharias, a sales coach and trainer with Briggs Sales Coaching and Management. I work within the agriculture industry. Companies have turned to me when they want to refresh and rally their sales team. They want to create differentiation in the marketplace. They are tired with everything being about price. I provide both sales training sessions and ongoing individual coaching. I work with sales teams and sales leaders. I provide an advantage by having 20 years in ag sales, being a sales coach who provides ongoing coaching, and being nimble. I was hoping I could spend some time in discussion. What's the big difference between the first one and this one? It's not about me, it's about why customers are turning to me, okay? It's about the customer's viewpoint. And what we want is the customer somewhere to go, oh, yeah, I got that going on. Oh yeah, that makes sense to me. Oh yeah, I do have that going on. Right? So if we said, rather than crop aid and we're based out of here and we do this and we have products that do this, and this would have been the old way. How about something that says customers are turning to us because they're fed up with compaction in their soil and they need to do something about it. Or they've identified these saline patches for years and just think they might be able to finally do something about it. If we use that in our elevator speech, and they go, oh, I have some of those. Oh, I got that going on. Now they're being drawn in. Now they want to listen to us a little bit more because they've established that we're applicable to them. And that's what we want. We're applicable to them. Okay? So the sequence is something like this. Introduction, really quickly. You have to do an introduction because we've got to bucket ourselves, right? Truck drives in and they're like, do you guys sell equipment? Do you sell livestock supplies? Do you sell, fertilizer? What do you do? So we got to bucket ourselves a little bit. So we got to have a quick introduction. And again, a little bit of name, location, things like that to create a little bit of familiarity. That's okay. But we want to quickly transition to customers turn to us when. And then we start listing those customer needs so that we can show our applicability. Then a little bit more about what we offer, but then more about what makes us unique, right? Because again, if it's we do this, this, and this, and we're the third person that said that we do this, this, and this, they're going to go, but why are you different than anybody else, right? So we want to have a little bit about why we're different. Okay? So if you decide to build one of these for yourself, a good way to start is, why are customers turning to you? Think of your customers who use your product and why are they using it? Think about your customers that are using your product and what have they seen? What benefits have they seen? Because those customer stories are going to relate much better with your potential customers than a bunch of jargon about yourself. Okay? And then the second thing you want to ask yourself is, why are we different? That's important. Because there's lots of people who are going to come on and make similar claims, right? There's a lot of humic salespeople. No offense to past humic salespeople. But there's a lot of humic salespeople. There's a lot of humic products. They're going to talk about salinity. They're going to talk about compaction. They're going to talk about different things. Why are we different is going to be key in some of that elevator speech too. Okay? And then put it together in sort of that format. So thank you for having me. Thanks for listening, participating. Quick sales pitch. I do performance coaching. If anyone is at that point in their distribution where they're looking for somebody to talk to, someone to, bounce ideas with, that's what I do. But thank you very much for having me, and hope is it 1 day, 2 days that you guys, 1 day? Hope the rest of the day is absolutely great for you guys.